What's going on YouTube? Ryan and Alex back from Dopemon once again to talk about, you clicked on the video, you saw it, NHL Free Agency, Day 2, October 10th, we're going to talk about all the signings that happened that day. If you're wondering, where's October 9th, Ryan and Alex? It started on the 9th. There's another video on our channel. We'll link that down in the description, or we'll put one of the cards up there. You can go check that out if you want to see anyone who was signed the day before. Guys like TJ Brody were signed, Markstrom, some of the goalies, big names, Torrey Krug. This will just be October 10th.
Yeah, you probably watched that video already. So most importantly, we will be posting more days and more videos coming up in the for more signings.
Yes, if you came from our previous video, hi, hello. Thank you for joining us once again.
Welcome back again.
Without further ado, first guy I want to talk about, Kevin Labanc. San Jose Sharks signed him, re-signed him, 4 years, $4.7 million a year. Now, Kevin Labanc had a really good season a couple years ago and then signed a 1-year, $1 million deal, and it confused the hell out of everybody. Now
he bet on himself.
He bet on himself, had another solid season on a bad Sharks team, and ends up cashing in at $4.7 million a year for 4 years. I think for Labanc, it's great. The Sharks are kind of in a pseudo rebuild, so they need their own players and good young players. I think 4.7 is a little bit high, personally.
I think he could have made that much 2 years ago or a year ago when he had that good season. I think this is what he probably could have signed for then.
Yeah, I think him adding the extra money. Pardon what? Sorry?
It seemed kind of redundant, the 1 year, $1 million to me now, after seeing him sign for probably what he would have gotten anyway.
Yeah, I think whatever money he would have made last year, they kind of made it up on this contract.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I like Kevin Labanc. 2 years ago, he had 17 goals, 56 points in 82 games for San Jose. Last year, only had 33 points. But like I said, the Sharks were bad. And they project to be bad for a few more years while they're kind of in this pseudo-rebuild stage.
Yeah, figuring out whatever they're in.
Figuring out their plan going forward. And Labanc will have helped them more than he will hurt this team. So I do like the re-signing. Sure. I do like the re-signing here for San Jose. Moving on, Alex. Craig Smith. Signs in Boston, 3 years,
I like
3.1. I like him too.
I think this is actually a good contract. But I don't like this for Boston. Because I think they need to. I think they're getting older as a team, and I think they need to get younger. And Craig Smith isn't getting younger. He's probably on the past his prime. He's started to regress a little bit. He's still a very, very serviceable middle six, probably third line kind of guy. But I think for Boston, that's what they need. But I think they need it younger. And I don't know if Craig Smith is that for the next 3 years. I don't know if that's a good fit for Boston.
I think it's a pretty good fit.
I do like, yeah.
I think it's a good fit. He plays a Boston style of game. He's not overly flashy. And we talked about it before. Boston has a little bit of injury concerns going into this season. And having some depth and guys who could step into a top six role if needed are really important for them this year. And
he's a guy who definitely could.
Definitely could. Craig Smith, for those of you who don't know who Craig Smith is probably one of the most under the radar players of the last half decade or so. Very quietly in Nashville, has put up 5 20-goal seasons in his time in Nashville. Last year only had 18 goals, but because of the shortened season, he would have gotten to 20, 100%. I think this is a really good signing for Boston, who needs some depth up front going into this year with all the already weird concerns about when the season's going to start, and then all the injuries that are taking place for the Boston Bruins. Pasternak and Marchand are going to just had surgery, and we're, depending on when the season starts, could miss the first part of it. Having him there, I think, is very important. And on a 3-year deal, I think they can get away with it if he ages out a little bit and slows down. Moving on to the Leafs. Zach Bogosian signs a 1-year, $1 million deal with Toronto. I think is a great deal.
I love this. I love this signing.
I like this signing too. It adds depth to our bottom six. Our bottom six. It's a defenseman.
Yeah.
To our bottom
two.
pairing, our bottom four defenseman. He's not going to play. I heard some people talking about, he's going to play with Riley. He's not. He's not, guys. You know, he played with Hedman in the playoffs.
Getting like a few shifts with Riley if the pairings work, because the one guy played on the power play, one guy played on the penalty kill, and you just need to mix up lines because you have the right hand shot, left hand shot. Things happen, but for the most part, no.
Anyone who is suggesting Zach Bogosian is going to play
as a partner for no
is forgetting that Mike Babcock is not in charge of this team anymore.
And that they just signed TJ Brody.
Yeah, and the fact that they signed TJ Brody. I think he'll be maybe he'll sneak up into Muzzin and be a partner for him, but I think he'll be the last pair. He'll be with either Dermott or Sandin or Lettinen, whoever however that shapes up. But I think it's a good sign. He may not even play every game. He might be scratched. He's not I don't think he's an everyday player, but I don't think he's not a top six defenseman. This is another signing for, I think, the playoffs for Toronto more so than the regular season. And yeah, anyway, enough about Zach Bogosian. Andre Burakovsky signs a 2-year, $4.9 million to stay in Colorado. I don't know about this signing for Colorado. At that money specifically, that is a huge cap hit for someone who, up to that point in his career, has not been a 20-goal, 40-point guy that he did last year. He scored 20 goals for the first time in his career. Before that, his high was 17 in Washington and 15, 16. He's been a guy. He's been a guy on the cusp of being really good for a long time, and then had a pretty decent season in Colorado, and especially in the playoffs. But I'm worried they overpaid because of that.
I see it as in Washington, he got a lot of middle six winger time. He never played with Ovechkin. He didn't play with Backstrom and Kuznetsov. He had to do a lot of it by himself and played a lot of depth scoring role, and he shut up about it the entire time. He didn't, until they won the cup, and he said, "Hey, I deserve to get paid." And Washington said, "We just can't afford you." Not that they didn't want him, that they just didn't want to give him that much money. And then he goes to Colorado, gets to the second line, minutes, like the top six scorer that he feels he should be. And at that level, he does produce, and he's like, "Look, the Washington held me back. You gave me a chance, and I proved I can play at this level. Give me my money." And I think if he put up 2 seasons like this in a row, like he just did, he could probably ask for a lot more money than he did. And if he does put up another season like this next year, this could be a kind of bargain contract for a.
Yeah, if he keeps producing, then yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, I think we mentioned this in the last video. If Colorado goes out and wins a cup next year, it doesn't matter what anybody signed for.
Yeah.
They're on the cusp. They are a cup contender in my mind for at least the next couple of years, especially with Nathan McKinnon on that team. And, they got some cap space to throw around. They got a lot of room. So having a guy that they like at a little bit higher money and maybe a little more risky isn't a bad idea. If they were really close to the cap, I would be a little more concerned, but they're not. And yeah. That's all I have on Burakovsky. Next guy I want to talk about, and I was a little bit confused why he went here. Thomas Greiss goes to Detroit. 2 years at $3.6 million a season. Thomas Greiss has had some really, really good seasons for the Islanders. Some really good seasons. Some really under the radar.
For sure. Yeah.
Good hockey for them. 2 years ago, in 43 games, kind of split the starting job at a .927 save percentage. That's crazy. Last year, .913 in 31 games. I think he's going to regress hard.
Oh, for
for
sure.
his
I don't
numbers.
think that he'll. I think like you've said this about a few players. He's being paid for who he was versus what he is now.
Yeah.
Though I think that that number was set by Hudobin's contract. I think Hudobin's a lot better, but as like he could argue, hey, I'm a backup who plays this role. I can put up good numbers. You can rely on me. That earns me $3 million-ish a year.
Yeah. He's gonna
And
go
you
to
know,
Detroit though and have worse numbers.
and have a yeah, that's Detroit. I think Detroit's going to be a little bit better than last year, but that they're not a cup contending
No, they're
team.
not a defensive specialist team like
No.
the Islanders have been the last couple of years. That kind of helps his goaltending numbers out a little bit.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
Detroit fans, you're gonna be a little, don't expect 930 out of Thomas Greiss.
Nope, nope.
I think maybe expect 915 to 910 somewhere in there. He's still
Yeah,
a solid
909.
goaltender and can get the job done on most nights, but he's older. He's 34, and you're not signing him as a goalie of the future. So don't be too excited, but be happy you got a decent goalie in there, and you don't have to continue to deal with Jonathan Bernier as much. As a Leafs fan, I feel you on that. I have Troy Stecher here. I just want to talk about him for a second. Also going to Detroit. 2 years, $1.7 million. This is another one where I don't know why he would want to go to Detroit.
Mm.
He's still very young. He's 26, and as a defenseman, a lot of defensemen don't really hit their prime until later, later in their 20s. So he still has a little bit of room to grow, I think.
And it's also a pay cut for him.
Huge pay cut.
Yeah,
Or not huge. I thought it was a little bit more than that.
I mean, when you make millions of dollars, it's still millions of dollars, but it was like a sizable chunk off of his salary.
Yeah, and as a right-hand shot defenseman in a market that needs right-hand shot defensemen, I was a little bit surprised that he took a pay cut to go to Detroit rather than sign for, I think his value would be a little higher, some other team.
Mhm.
But I'm a,
Especially after the season he had. I thought he had a really good season. He's still a third pairing guy, but he showed that like he's an NHL ready, defenseman. So
yeah, this is a guy that I was kind of hoping the Leafs took a shot at. Personally, I've
hmm
liked Troy Stecher for a long time. I thought he would be a good fit for the last few years, but going to Detroit. Well, interesting to see. Not a huge, like you said, not a big guy that's going to move the needle too much for Detroit, but a guy that's going to get the job done most nights. And they're a younger team. He'll fit in there, and we'll see how that goes. Unless I skipped over someone, our next player that I want to talk about is Cody Eakin. Cody
Same.
Eakin signing for 2 years, $2.25 million a season to play for the Buffalo Sabres. What do you have on Cody Eakin, Alex?
I really like this for Buffalo. I think they raised a lot of eyebrows at the draft and people saying, you have needs. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing here? What's going on, Buffalo? What's your plan? And a lot of people were looking, and I think this signing kind of shuts a lot of people up and settles a lot of nerves for Buffalo fans. They do exist. Buffalo fans do exist. uh, they have a responsible third line center who keeps he can help them win games and keep them out of trouble, and that's what Buffalo needs.
Yeah, I think defensively is very responsible in his own end. I think he had a really good year a couple years ago at 41 points. I don't think he's that player, but I don't think he's the 10 points in 41 games for Vegas that he was last year before going to Winnipeg. He's somewhere in the middle of those two. They don't need him to score points. They need him to keep pucks out of their zone. And Cody Eakin is really good at that. I've liked him ever since he was part of the Canada World Junior squad in, I think, 2009,
Yeah,
2010. Can't remember. I've liked
had a
him ever
very
since
underrated
then.
career.
Very underrated career, and a guy that I think is going to fit very well in Buffalo. All right, moving up one more spot, Valeri Nichushkin signed a 2-year, $2.5 million contract to stay in Colorado. Let's bring up his stats. Nichushkin was a guy for a long time. He went out back to Russia, and then he came back. I really liked Nichushkin, years ago. But
Yeah, I had high hopes for him half a decade, ago when he first came into the NHL. He had a really good rookie season and then didn't after that.
yeah, and then kind of found it again a little bit
Yeah,
with the
this
Colorado
year.
Avalanche. 27 points in 65 games. Betting on this player long term, I think, is a little bit of a risk, but uh, getting a 2-year, 2.5 mil contract to, you know, hopefully keep going on this path that he's on, this little resurgent path that Nichushkin is on, I think is a big win for both sides, and I like
Yeah,
this
if he
from
can
Colorado.
keep up the third line scoring role that he's on, if he can be ineffective at $2.5 million, that's exactly what Colorado needs to win a cup.
Speaking of Colorado, and we can mention
Mm-hmm.
the trade on this as well. Nikita Zadorov signs in Chicago.
Yep, because he is also the Zadorov being signed as the next name.
Yeah. And if you're wondering why did he sign in Chicago, I thought he was in Colorado. It's because he was one of the trades that day that we're also going to talk about. And we can talk about the trade first if you want. The Chicago Blackhawks acquired Nikita Zadorov and Anton Lindholm in exchange for Brandon Saad with $1 million retained and Dennis Gilbert. This is really a Saad for Zadorov trade.
Yeah. The rest is just depth.
The other two guys being, AHL guys, really. Should the Chicago Blackhawks love to trade Brandon Saad?
It's kind of funny.
And I am curious. They love to trade him away and then overpay to get him back in 2 years. So we'll see what that trade looks like in a couple seasons when they try to trade him, back.
Trade for him again. Yep.
Trade for him again when they realize, oh, we need this player. I think Chicago getting Nikita Zadorov is good for them.
I think it's a win for both teams.
It's a win for both teams. Brendan Saad. It's a good hockey trade. I agree. Brendan Saad fills a hole for the Avalanche, and Zadorov does the same thing in Chicago. So I understand why the trade was made, and then Chicago immediately signing him to 1 year, $3.2 million contract. Nikita Zadorov is still 25. So he's still in this range of defensemen where you're not quite sure if this is exactly what you have yet because there's a little bit of growth remaining because he's a defenseman. He's not an offensive guy. He's not going to run you any power plays, but he's going to be a good defenseman for the Blackhawks, I believe.
And in our mock drafts, we both had Chicago taking a defenseman because we saw a hole that they had, and clearly management saw the same kind of hole. For me, I saw them taking Braden Schneider because of the size that he brought, the size and physicality, and that's something that Zadorov has. He has the size and physicality, and I'm glad to have seen that, and I'm glad that Chicago saw that as well. It's a hole that they have, and they're filling it.
I agree. I think it's a good hockey trade, and I think both sides are going to benefit from it in different ways. Moving on, the Columbus Blue Jackets sign Mikko Koivu to a 1 year, $1.5 million deal. Mikko Koivu has played
1.75. Sorry.
Am
I looking
sorry,
at
the cap hit is 1.5, 1.75.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. I'm looking
value.
at. Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that.
I'm always saying cap hit.
Yeah.
But there are other bonuses.
Yeah.
The bonus detail on cap friendly, $100,000 if Columbus makes the second round of the playoffs, and $150,000 if they make the conference finals. So these are performance bonuses based on team play. Could bump him up to the 1.75 range, so that's good for Koivu. This guy is a player who's played 1,028 games for one team, and he's been a Minnesota Wild his whole career, and is not the player he was. But I think this is a good player to kind of solidify some depth that Columbus may or may not have had, some offensive depth. So a guy who's a little bit more skilled to play behind the likes of Dubois in the center position. I've always liked Mikko Koivu. He's got some great career numbers. I don't know if he's Hall of Famer or anything, but He's a guy that will come into Columbus and I think really help them more than he'll hurt them, especially
Mm-hmm.
on a really cheap contract like this.
Yeah, he definitely fills the role that they need for fairly cheap. I think that's the important part. They don't have to break the bank to get a guy that that can provide nice depth scoring and nice depth defense. He's a Koivu's good at both ends of the ice, and I think that's important. I think under Tortorella's system, he could play really well. So not just offensively. So I like it for Columbus as well. I think it's kind of just a meh signing. It's not that big of a deal, but at the end of the season, we'll be like, oh, thank God he's been on the team. That was a really good signing. And for his sake, I hope he does get those performance bonuses.
Yeah, I hope the Leafs don't have to play Columbus again for them to
Mm-hmm.
get them. But yeah, I hope so too. The guys deserve it. He's had a long career and hopefully keeps it going in Columbus for a few more.
Mm-hmm.
Next guy I want to talk about, Mike Smith. Mike Smith signing a 1-year, $1.5 million cap hit in Edmonton to stay back in Edmonton. Now I have notes on all these players. We'll have notes about what we're gonna say. The only note I have is why? Question mark. I have not. I was a little bit surprised when they brought Mike Smith back.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they figured, hey, all the big goalies are gone. We didn't, we swung and missed on all of them. Let's just bring back Smith because we know what he brings. Mike Smith, I think, is way past his prime.
Oh, for sure.
He had a 902 save percentage in 39 games last year and an 898 and 42 for Calgary the year before. And I don't know. I'm looking at his numbers in the playoffs. I don't remember what happened, but he has a .783 and a 999 goals against average. I don't know
Mm.
what happened. He must have came in the last 5 minutes, and now his numbers are all screwed up for that one
Yeah,
playoff game.
yeah.
I was looking at that. I'm like, whoa, never seen a nine goals against average start with a 9.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
I thought it was the save percentage for a second. My goodness.
You hope it's the
Um,
same percentage. Yeah, I
yeah,
don't see him being a effective.
no.
For Edmonton as goaltending. I almost see this as like a really expensive goalie coach. Signing for the team. Like
Yeah, but they have.
maybe a character for the locker room. Mike Smith is a character
Oh
guy.
yeah,
He's got a great attitude. Maybe part of it's that he's just they, like you said, they missed out on some big names, but there are some other goalies out there that could probably go for cheaper. So maybe it's just a locker room thing. Just fits well. I don't.
yeah. They
I'm
must they
trying
must
to
really
make
like him
specific
personally.
examples. Yeah.
And I have shown the performance bonuses are on a screen here. Signed a similar deal to Koivu, we just talked about. The games played bonuses. 25, 250,000 at each mark or whatever. You can read that down there, and there's also one for playoff if they win the first round, and he plays the minimum games and all sorts of things. So he could make up to 2 salary wise, but we'll see. This might be a guy who hopefully plays more of a backup role. He's been like a 1B in Edmonton for the last couple of years with Koskinen. I hope they give more games to Koskinen and not Mike Smith, just for Edmonton's sake. But yeah, interesting signing. I didn't expect him to resign anywhere, honestly. I would have bet that he was going to retire. But
Me as well.
that wasn't the case. They must have been like, I don't like anyone else. Let's bring Mike back. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes in Edmonton. Also in Edmonton,
Cool.
Tyson Barrie signs a 1-year, $3.75 million contract to go to the Edmonton Oilers.
And I think that cap hit is probably closer to what he's actually worth than the $8 million he was asking for from Toronto.
I think you asked that from Toronto, and I heard that too because he didn't want to play here, and he's like,
And that was
I didn't
early.
have a good time.
I think that was early in the season like right when he got traded was like,
Oh,
if
you're
I'm
talking about. Oh, okay, yeah.
right, and he's like, before he actually like stepped foot on the ice, he's like, if I'm gonna re-sign now, it'll be for $8 million. And
Yeah,
then
that
he went out
was.
there and yeah, I think that's what happened. And then he comes out and plays, and it's like, okay,
Yeah, went out there and booted his season a little bit.
yeah,
There's, I think that I really like this trade for the signing for Edmonton.
me too.
Apparently, he left a lot of money on the table, uh, specifically from Vancouver that wanted him. Apparently, he was offered upwards of 6 in Vancouver, and he turned it
I
down
could
to.
see that for a 1 year deal, 6, maybe 6.5 even.
Yeah,
Is a team desperate enough for offense?
I think he didn't go there because Barrie is a very situational offensive player. After seeing him in Toronto for a little bit, he
Mm-hmm.
needs to be the number one power play guy, the number one offensive guy to rack up some points. He's going to go to Edmonton on a team that has no penalty kill quarterback with Clefbaum's injuries, being a little bit of a question mark. So he's going to go play on the number one power play with McDavid. He's going to get top pair minutes. In Vancouver, he would have been second to Quinn Hughes. So I think that's why he declined the Vancouver trade and went to Edmonton. I like this for both sides, especially on a 1 year deal. This is the ultimate bet on yourself deal.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to go there,
Playing with Connor McDavid.
he's going to go up there, rack up huge points, and then next year get a 6-7 mil per year deal,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. In Toronto, he had a bad start with Mike Babcock. He didn't play very well under Babs, but turned it around and played, I think, at a 55-point pace under Keefe. And
He was effective.
He was effective. He was very effective, and I think this is good for Edmonton. Last couple guys here on day 2. I'm gonna start with Jordan Greenway, re-signing in Minnesota. 2 years, $2.1 million. This was an RFA deal. Jordan Greenway is still a prospect, almost in my opinion. He's 23 years old. He's huge. I didn't realize he was 6'6". I knew he was big, but I didn't know he was that big. 28 points, 67 games last year. Great signing. I mean, it's your guy. Still a prospect. The 1 year deal. I would have, if I were Minnesota, wanted to sign him for more, but because of the economy, the weird things and weird 1 year.
2 year deal.
Oh, 2 year deal. Sorry.
Yeah, 2 year deal.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, they get the 2 year.
Anyway,
2 year.
never mind then. That's good for Minnesota then. Having him on a couple years. For some reason, I think I read it as 2, but in my head it was just like 1. Anyway, great signing, I think, for both players. Still a young player, going to develop. No problems with this.
Yeah, I really like this for Minnesota as well. I think that they have like solidified their top 4 for next year, and he'll slide in as a bottom pairing D. And if Minnesota decides to move their defenseman in the future, he's the kind of guy who can probably fill into a second pairing kind of role in the future. He might have that destined for him. He still has a lot of room for growth. And these next 2 years, the $2 million each is it's good for him. Good for Minnesota. I like this.
Last signing of the day on October 10th, day 2 of the NHL Free Agency, was Jesper Fast, going to Carolina, 3 years, $2 million a season. I know you like this player more than I do.
I do like Jesper Fast, and I think he fits Carolina's style perfectly.
Yeah.
And I think this contract goes right through his prime, but I still do see it's kind of maybe an overpayment for a guy who's just a depth scorer.
Yeah.
But he has put up consistent, the past 3 years, good seasons, and now he's like, hey, I want to get paid for it instead of just signing these league minimum kind of deals. And this is it for him. This is his big money making contract, the one time in his career he gets to do it, and all the power to him. I hope he plays really well. I hope his style fits in Carolina. It's not too expensive, so I don't think it's not gonna like sink him if he's not doesn't turn out. But okay, he is what he is. Like I think it's all right for Carolina. That does have a lot of top end offensive talent already. They could, use a depth scorer.
I definitely agree with you when you say he feels like a Carolina player.
Mm-hmm.
I have written down here Carolina known to get players like this and hit on them. So
Yeah.
he seems like a guy that's going to fit in well there, coming from the Rangers his entire career. Yeah, he's going to step in and I think play very well. I think he's right around I don't think it's necessarily an overpay. 3-year term might be, a little questionable.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
there's an
the only.
overterm, not an overpay.
Yeah,
Maybe
the $2 million a year though for a few years isn't, I think, gonna ruffle anyone's feathers, especially for Carolina. And he's a guy I think that's easily tradable if you need to.
For sure,
Um,
for sure.
Easily tradable to any team once guys like this. That's all for signings. Something I wanted to go through with you that we haven't done yet, other than the Zadorov trade, was discuss the trades that happened that day. There were a couple. Zadorov already talked about. Let's talk about, because I'm a Leafs fan, the Andreas Johnsson for Joey Anderson trade. The Leafs acquiring Joey Anderson from the Devils. What do you think about this? I want to get your opinion first.
I really like this for Toronto.
Yeah.
I think Janssen has hit as good as he's gonna get. I think he's third, fourth, bottom six kind of depth two-way guy, and I think he was maybe, with the current economic situation, he's overpaid. In a normal season, maybe not. I didn't think he had a very good year. I don't think he didn't have a very good role with the team. And to pick up a guy like Joey Anderson, who could, in the future play the exact same kind of role that Janssen does, I feel like value-wise, this is even. But Toronto gets to dump $3.5 million, and they get to look to their future. And I think in that case, Toronto wins this deal.
I 100% agree with everything you said.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I do want to point out is Joey Anderson's technically was his rights as an RFA.
Right,
So
yeah, he's not signed.
They still need to sign him. I don't think they'll have to sign him for much.
No, it's league minimum,
not
probably.
even close to the 3.4 that Janssen was making. It'll be $1 million, maybe a little less than $1 million a year for Joey Anderson. I think he could be a very good player for the Leafs in that bottom six winger position. I mentioned it before. I don't know if it was a previous video or this one. The Leafs winger situation could be really fun to watch. And this is another guy. I didn't even mention him. I forgot about him until I looked at this trade. There's a lot of guys that fit in here that could make sense for Toronto's when they get to training camp, whenever that is. So it'll be interesting to see.
These guys are going to be up there on everybody's list, especially because of this trade. Everybody's going to have their eyes on him.
Day 2, another trade happened. Nashville Predators acquire 2021 fourth overall pick that was originally Colorado's. In exchange, Ottawa acquires Austin Watson.
I like this trade. I've been a fan of Watson since he came into the NHL. I like the physicality that he brings. I think it took a few years for him to really bring all of his game to the NHL level and make it effective. But Nashville's gotten that out of him, and now they've sent Ottawa a guy who's basically in his prime and been developed and will be as a big body for Ottawa's bottom sixth. I think he'll play well with the young talent that they do have coming up, be a good role model, and I have nothing bad to say about this one.
No, I think it's a good trade. For a fourth round pick, this is a good NHLer, right?
Yeah.
And Ottawa needs guys who are good NHLers.
They just need bodies.
They need bodies. And Austin Watson fits that role. He's a prick to play against. I think it's good for Ottawa. One more trade we want to talk about, because we missed it in the last video, happened the day before. Winnipeg Jets reacquire Paul Stastny from the Vegas Golden Knights for Carl Dahlstrom and a conditional fourth. I don't know what that condition is. It doesn't actually say here.
Yeah, because it's a fourth, it might not even matter. It
might not matter.
It's 2022, so we're not going to have to worry about it for a while, at least, anyway. Yeah.
What do you think about Winnipeg reacquiring Paul Stastny?
I think this is huge for Winnipeg, because there were huge, big talks about trading Laine, and I think that trading Laine was the wrong decision, a wrong choice for them to make. They didn't make it. I think it would have been a wrong choice for them had they made it, because they had spent the past 4 years developing him into the perfect a scoring winger. I think they've finally done that. He's finally the kind of guy they need, and now they have the second line center who could play with him. Because I know Line A had always complained, saying, "Hey, I want to play with Scheifele," but that's just not how lines work in the NHL. You got to work your matchups and stuff, and having two scoring lines, I think that could be really attractive to Line A. And Paul Stastny's a guy he's played with before, so I think it's a big win for Winnipeg, who was clearly looking for that second line center and didn't have to give up too much, in my opinion, to get it.
Yeah, I agree. Winnipeg was hurting real bad for some centers, especially on the second line, like you said, and has played there before, is familiar with their system, and I think will seamlessly, get back in there. I think roughly, 40 points is his projection for next year. Um, Only 1 year left on the contract he signed initially with Vegas, so he's at 6.5 for next year. And then his contract expires. So they're taking a big contract. It's big money value
Yeah, but
wise for this year, but it's only for 1 year. And getting that guy who fits in perfectly on your team, I think is worth that.
and when we were doing our mock drafts, I thought that they were going to take Lindell and make a move for a second line center. I saw this happening, so they can in a few years transition a center who they draft into that position. And instead of taking Lindell, they ended up with Cole Perfetti. So
Yeah,
I think he's a guy who maybe not next year, but the following year will play with Line A. So you don't have to worry about Stastny re-signing him or anything. You have him now, short term band aid to get rid of him, and you have long term success in Winnipeg.
I agree. And I think that's it for trades and signings for this
That
day.
was day 2 of the free agent frenzy.
Stick around. This channel will have the rest of the signings. We're going to do another video for day 3, 4, and 5 because there wasn't as much movement. We'll keep you updated on the rest of the weeks coming forward. There's still a lot of guys available. If you made it this far in the video, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel. We'll be talking a lot of hockey here in the off season. I'm gonna once NHL 21 becomes available to general public, we're gonna be doing some hockey videos here.
I'm
Um,
excited for some video gaming.
yeah, get back to video gaming. We talk a lot of hockey lately, but we still are a gaming channel, I think. So we'll still do that as well. But yeah, we won't always have Pokemon on this channel, but
We will always be dope. Thank you so much.